As I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play? Particularly when we've seen coordinated media attacks before. I don't mind them using my books and my stand-up to talk about my promiscuous consensual conduct in the past. What I seriously refute are these very, very serious criminal allegations. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are witnesses whose evidence directly contradicts the narratives that these two mainstream media outlets are trying to construct, apparently in what seems to me to be a coordinated attack.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. When we examine this 60-second excerpt from the 48-year-old British comedian Russell Brand's social media, by the way, posted the same video on his YouTube channel and Instagram page and on X, well, what do we notice? Well, first of all, most of what he says is fluff. Barely a third of his weekly named "So This Is Happening" self-disclosure video really tells us much more than that it's serious and may involve a crime. Even the third that is more relevant is still fluffy. He says, for example, "I have received two extremely disturbing letters," or a letter and an email, one from a mainstream media TV company and one from a newspaper. Note that he doesn't actually identify either of these organizations, listing a litany of egregious and aggressive attacks. He says, "This is happening." Amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. But instead of informing people of the exact allegations against him, he's more specific about, not really sure what, media conspiracies that he feels exist, and he gives a couple of examples. This is already a tricksy dodge for someone who excels at telling it like it is. He even admits as much when he says how transparent he's always been, except he isn't transparent here. He doesn't tell us what the allegations are. So the second point to make is that Brand seems to be trying to control the narrative, which is to say, having his say, having a sort of preemptive bite at the apple before people find out what this is really all about, and explaining something he didn't do without actually saying what it is he supposedly did do. And all of this while offering his audience a carrot in the sense of saying, this is why this thing that you don't fully know about is happening. Now, what he does disclose is that it has something to do with sex, something to do with being promiscuous, and something to do with whether it's consensual. Before we deal with the micro-expression sides of things, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I'm the author of several books, including dealing with British true crime. I've also studied law. I've been in the true crime game for quite a long time. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So let's examine what's being said about Brand briefly in the media, and also exactly what those allegations are. Now, according to the New York Post, Russell Brand has been accused of rape, essay, and abuse, and that's according to a joint investigation by the Sunday Times of London, the Times, and Channel 4 dispatches. And apparently one of his accusers was allegedly 16 years old at the time. Now, while you can argue about the credibility of the media, and as far as I'm concerned, some of these media that have been cited here, not by him, but certainly by the New York Post, are, as far as I'm concerned, pretty credible. What this is going to come down to is the credibility of the witnesses. And I think one thing you can ask as well is, if the witnesses weren't credible, would certain credible newspapers and media channels cover this? It is interesting that instead of a flat denial by Brand, all he could say is, this is not true, and he, basically in 10 seconds or 20 seconds, he could basically say, the allegations you're about to hear today are about X, Y, and Z, and they are absolutely not true. 20 seconds, done. And that should be sufficient. But instead he reinforces his denial by noting that his accusers seem to be cooperating in a nefarious, coordinated way. And while I think it's true that there are several accusers, I think this expose is landing at the same time, in terms of across certain media, but also several people coming forward at the same time. The other side of that coin is what's also true is the accusations are more damaging coming from 4 separate women during 4 separate times than just one. According to the New York Post, Brand had earlier posted a preemptive video denying the allegations on YouTube and Twitter without mentioning the outlets by name. Now, it's also interesting how cautious Brand has been not mentioning news outlets by name and not being more specific. And one's got to ask, why is that? Did he just forget to be more specific, or is he trying to control the narrative? And bear in mind, media folk are very good at that. They're very good at PR. So does he want people to find things out about him elsewhere? Does he want to volunteer damaging information in order to deal with it? Well, no, which is why he doesn't point them in that direction. He doesn't say, well, this is the information. So much for transparency. Now on to MicroExpressions. It's interesting to me how Brand doesn't blink in the 10 seconds when he's talking about how all his relationships are absolutely consensual. You might want to watch that a couple of times to catch what I'm talking about. And I mean, that is absolutely critical. It's a critical legal aspect to this case. It's not just that he doesn't blink when he's saying the words absolutely consensual. It's the long blinklessness that precedes it. Remember, Brand is an actor, and he will be putting his best acting foot forward to come across credibly and believably. And so the question is, does he succeed? What do you think? He probably also did a couple of takes trying to get this video exactly the way that he would want it. There is a big blink and slight shake of the head when he throws his arms at the screens and he says, and I'm being transparent now as well.
Into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play?
So do you see when he says he absolutely denies, there's a blink immediately following this, which is a slight mismatch to the open-eyed stare that preceded it. If you consider his statement about agendas and conspiracies, is he really being transparent about what he's talking about the subject of, even is the title of his video transparent about what it's about? And is it transparent about what he's admitting? What is he admitting? Or is he diverting attention to agendas and conspiracies? It's very difficult to be clear on what these microexpressions really mean without a deeper baseline, without getting to know him and his expressions more intimately, and without much better context and information. And so we'll be looking into that in further analysis. We also need to spend more time assessing the credibility or lack of from his 4 accusers. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.